Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with no basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka Aaron, and folks, we are back. Season 6, Episode 2. This is the 95th overall episode I've done. 5 episodes away from 100 episodes. That's crazy. I can't believe it. But folks, we are back with more hot takes or mild takes or cold takes, depending on how you interpret them. But we got a lot to talk about that's happened since the season premiere this year. Last episode was last Tuesday, so not this past Tuesday, the Tuesday before that, which was obviously opening night. But today we're going to get into where the standings are in the first week and a half of the season, the best performances from this first week and a half. We gotta talk about the gambling scandal or story that came out unfortunately last week, and then we are back with marquee matchups to wrap up the show. But folks, as I always say, let's just jump right into it. So current standings as of the time of recording, this is October 30th when I'm recording this, so Thursday night, probably October 31st, Halloween, when you're listening to this. But as it stands right now, I want to talk about the early standings. Again, I want to put an emphasis on early. You know, I wouldn't take too much stock into the standings for where we are right now. It's only 4 or 5 games in, but I would say it's not necessarily unimportant. So let's start in the Western Conference. In the Western Conference, no surprise, number 1 seed so far is the Oklahoma City Thunder. Then you've got the number 2 seed, my San Antonio Spurs, the only other undefeated team in the Western Conference. They are 4-0. And then you have the Golden State Warriors at the 3rd spot at 4-1. You have the Denver Nuggets at the 4th spot at 3-1. And then you've got the Portland Trail Blazers at 5. And then the Los Angeles Lakers at 6, both at 3-2. So if the playoffs were to start today, obviously we got a long way to go. It's an 82-game season. But if the playoffs were to start today, those would be your 6 playoff teams. And then you've got your 4 potential play-in teams. Right now, as it stands, 7 through 10, it's the Memphis Grizzlies, the Utah Jazz, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Houston Rockets. And then you have your teams that would not make the playoffs or play in, as it stands right now in the West: Minnesota Timberwolves, Dallas Mavericks, Phoenix Suns, Sacramento Kings, and in the last place in the Western Conference, the New Orleans Pelicans. So a few surprises in the West, but before we dive into surprises, let's talk about the Eastern Conference. Eastern Conference, the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference, as it stands right now, as of October 30th, the Chicago Bulls at 4-0. I mean, they've been balling out. Josh Giddey's been doing his thing. You got Kobe White's been doing his thing. Crazy. I know, the Chicago Bulls. But then in the 2nd seed, you've got the Philadelphia 76ers, which I'll talk about here in just a little bit. You got the Miami Heat at the 3rd spot, the Milwaukee Bucks. They're both at 3-1 records. And then you have the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Detroit Pistons, both at 3-2, at 5 and 6 respectively. And then you've got your 4 play-in teams right now as it stands. You've got the New York Knicks at 7, Charlotte Hornets, Atlanta Hawks, and then my Boston Celtics at the last play-in spot at number 10, 2 and 3. And then you've got your remaining teams rounding out the teams that wouldn't make the playoffs if the playoffs were to start today. So let's talk about early surprises. You know, in the Western Conference, right now, I would say an early surprise is probably the Dallas Mavericks and the Minnesota Timberwolves, both sitting at 2 and 3 currently through their first 5 games. Unfortunately, you've got injuries, significant injuries to both teams. You have Anthony Davis, who is out with some sort of Achilles injury. It's not a torn Achilles, because obviously that would keep him out for the remainder of the year. But he went down, non-contact injury the other night. I can't exactly remember who they were playing, but he's got some Achilles injury. He didn't return in that game that he left, unfortunately. And then you have on the Minnesota Timberwolves, Anthony Edwards, their star player, one of the best players in the league, definitely top 5, top 10, depending on who you ask. Got a hamstring injury. I think he's going to be out at least 2 weeks is what the report said. So he's going to be reevaluated in the next 2 weeks. So those are definitely big injuries, but a little surprising, of course, before the injuries that those teams were at the spot that they were at. Also in the West, I would say a little bit of surprise is the New Orleans Pelicans as well. I know, Zion's back. It looks like he's in better shape this year. He lost some weight, but they're 0-4, the last place team in the Western Conference. I thought that was a little bit surprising. Some folks might not think that. I didn't think much of the New Orleans Pelicans coming into the season, but at 0-4, I didn't see that necessarily. But 3 of those losses were to, one was to the San Antonio Spurs, one was to the Boston Celtics, and then the Denver Nuggets. So obviously, those teams are no slouches, but still, you have the New Orleans Pelicans at 0-4. And then you have the Houston Rockets at 2-2. Just saying, if the playoffs started today, they would be the 10th seed, would have to win 2 games to try to make it to the 8th seed. But 2-2, it's still early. We can't take too much stock, like I said, but I just thought I'd call it out, because the Spurs are better than the Rockets right now. But in the Eastern Conference, Chicago and Philly both at 4-0. I didn't call that. I didn't see that. Both teams playing really well so far in the very early part of the season. Again, can't take too much stock into it, but both of those teams being undefeated. I got to give a shout out to VJ Edgecombe, the rookie for the Philadelphia 76ers. I'll talk about him in just a little bit, but man, he's hungry. He's balling out. I got to give him his flowers right now. But and then another surprise in the Eastern Conference, you have the Orlando Magic at 1-4. They made some big moves in the offseason. Desmond Bane they acquired. Tyus Jones they acquired. Paolo Banchero got his max extension, if I'm not mistaken. But they're sitting at 1-4. So obviously they've got some things to figure out in terms of, their lineup and all that stuff. Early on the season, plenty of time to turn things around. But still an early surprise with how wide open the East, was projected or is projected to be this year. Yeah, you wouldn't think that they would have started the season off 1-4. But let's transition just ever so slightly. Let's talk about some of the crazy performances that we've seen for this first week and a half of the season. It was NBA 2K in real life, it seemed. There was video game numbers from multiple top players and even some not so top players per se in the NBA in this first week and a half. Of course, we got to talk about the reigning MVP on the reigning defending champions, Oklahoma City Thunder. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 55 points against Indiana in a pretty good game. I think that game went into overtime. Obviously a finals rematch, but had 55 points against them. Absolutely phenomenal. You had Aaron Gordon, 50 points against the Golden State Warriors, unfortunately in an L for the Denver Nuggets, that is. But 50 points. He shot 10 of 11 from three-point range. Aaron Gordon, not a shooter. No disrespect, no shade to Aaron Gordon, but he's not known for his shooting ability. His game has always been predicated on his athleticism, but hats off to him. He's been working hard. Obviously, you don't make 10 of 11 three-pointers in an NBA game and not work on your jump shot. So big shout out to him. Also, his teammate Nikola Jokic, 4 consecutive triple-doubles to start the year. I believe that is tied for the most triple-doubles to start the season with Oscar Robertson, and none other than Russell Westbrook. I don't know if the Nuggets are playing tonight, but I believe if he scores another or puts up another triple-double in his 5th game, that would make him have the most in terms of starting the season with triple-doubles with 5 in a row. So we shall see. He's definitely got the game to do it. He's not putting up as high of scoring numbers as he was last year, but I don't even really think that Jokic likes to score, that much. It seems like he gets more satisfaction of being the facilitator on his team, but nonetheless, triple-double, big hats off to Nikola Jokic. But then you also had, Luka Doncic scored 43 points. Steph Curry had 42 points. My boy Wembanyama had 40 points in the season opener against the Dallas Mavericks. Also, in another game, had a near triple-double with blocks, had 9 blocks. Should have had 10 blocks, should have been a triple-double, but nonetheless, I digress. Victor Wembanyama been playing out of his mind in the early part of this season. And then I mentioned him earlier, Philadelphia rookie VJ Edgecombe, been playing very well in his NBA debut, scored 34 points against the Boston Celtics. Obviously, the Celtics are not at full strength right now, but 34 points against the, not the defending champions, but a recent champion. Hats off to him, BJ Edgecombe. He seems hungry, plays the game well. I really like watching him play. And then you got Austin Reeves, who dropped 51 points just the other night against the Sacramento Kings. Also had a pretty nice game winner against the Anthony Edwards-less Minnesota Timberwolves. So lots of great performances, great basketball overall with multiple overtime games, multiple thrillers. I got to give a hats off to the production teams as well. Lots of people have been talking about the production for NBC because now that the NBA is back on NBC, and then Amazon Prime, also got to give them a shout out to those teams, those broadcasts have been really, really well done. Definitely giving ESPN a run for their money in the early part of the season, but it's good to see, less hot takes, more on the court focus. But as I say that, it's also great to have the Inside the NBA guys back, no longer on TNT, but now on ESPN. And who doesn't love to hear the old heads argue and talk about random stuff in addition to talking about what we're seeing on the court? So it's great to have, the legend Ernie Johnson, Kenny the Jet Smith, Charles Barkley, and Shaquille O'Neal talking about all kind of stuff. So I'm glad that Inside the NBA is still a thing because we all love Inside the NBA. But so lots of great performances, some crazy things with the standings so far in the early part of the season. But let's transition again to a less joyful story, I guess, for lack of a better term. We got to talk about the huge gambling story that came out from the NBA last Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken. But like I said, I got to talk about the story. This was the morning after opening night. So after Victor Wembanyama did his thing against the Dallas Mavericks and dropped 40, big headlines all over the news Wednesday morning. Portland Trailblazers head coach Chauncey Billups and Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier were arrested and facing criminal charges over illegal betting schemes. Former NBA player Damon Jones was also arrested, but for the sake of time and for the sake of this show, we'll kind of focus in on Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier. So I've got a quick summary of an article from USA Today that kind of goes over the gambling scandal timeline. So I want to read that really quick, and then I'll kind of give my thoughts. But the NBA gambling scandal involving Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier centers on two separate but related illegal gambling schemes tied to organized crime, leading to the arrest of both men in October of 2025. So Chauncey Billups, like I said, Portland Trailblazers head coach, was indicted on charges related to participating in a rigged high-stakes poker scheme backed by mafia families, including, I'm not going to get their names right, but there was 3 different mafia crime families. Prosecutors allege that Chauncey Billups helped organize and participate in these games, which took place in locations like Las Vegas and New York to lure wealthy victims. The games were allegedly fixed using sophisticated cheating technology such as X-ray tables, hidden cameras, and pre-marked cards, defrauding players of millions of dollars. He also allegedly served as co-conspirator number 8 in the sports betting scheme, providing non-public information about the Trailblazers' player availability. And then on the other side of the gambling scandal, you have Terry Rozier, current Miami Heat guard. Rozier was charged in a scheme involving illegal sports betting and the use of insider information to manipulate prop bets, wagers on a player's individual statistics. The key allegation involves a March 23, 2023 game where Rozier, then with the Charlotte Hornets, allegedly told associates that he would remove himself from the game early due to a supposed injury. This allowed his co-conspirators to place underbets on his performance statistics, netting them hundreds of thousands of dollars in winnings. Both Billups and Rozier were charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud and money laundering and immediately placed on administrative leave by the NBA. Former player, like I said, Damon Jones, was also implicated, charged with participating in both the poker rigging and sports betting schemes. Another part, I don't have this written down, but another part that came out today or yesterday, if I'm not mistaken, was that both Chauncey Billups and Terry Rozier will not be paid while they are on administrative leave. So, crazy story. I know when I got the headline and they were releasing the news, like the mafia was involved, it was Chauncey Billups, who was well respected. I was like, what in the heck is going on here? Me and my buddies were talking about it in our group chat, and I was definitely thrown off. Nobody saw that coming, especially after having a great opening night, 2 solid games with the Houston Rockets and the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then the Dallas Mavericks and the San Antonio Spurs. And then we got this the morning after. But, with the rise of legal sports betting and pro sports, I was shocked, like I said, to see the headlines, but unfortunately, I can't say that I was surprised that this happened. Of course, hindsight is 2020, right? But I just had this sinking feeling that one of the major sports leagues, whether it was the NBA or the NFL or the MLB, was going to have some sort of gambling scandal that was going to rock the league. I saw some, there was some gambling controversy last year with, MLB star Shohei Ohtani. Now, federal investigations concluded that he did nothing wrong, but I saw that last year and I was like, that's not going to be the last one, and with this situation with the NBA and Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups, this will more than likely cause the league to make some significant changes. I don't know exactly what these changes are going to be or what they're going to look like. It could be stricter policies on players and teams surrounding injuries and if a player is going to play, or there could be some sort of, mandatory reporting or league review of any and all legal sports betting by any personnel. So if you work for the company and you decide to gamble legally in sports betting, there could be some stricter policies, more stringent review, maybe random checks. I don't know. Obviously, I'm not going to speculate into what the NBA is going to do, but what I do know is that if the integrity of the game is in question, that could be catastrophic in a multitude of ways for the National Basketball Association. So, ultimately Chauncey and Terry will have their chance to plead their case, presumably in front of a judge, and they are innocent until proven guilty. As of right now, everything is alleged. So I want to make that clear. But the fallout of this situation could cause major shakeups, not just for the NBA, but for the rest of the major sports leagues as well. But we shall see. Only time will tell. But let's transition one final time for the show. We got to talk about marquee matchups. They are back. So if you remember, if you are a longtime listener, marquee matchups, you basically pick a game, you get some points, and then depending on how many points you have at the end of marquee matchups, you win something. At least that's what I've been doing for the past few seasons. So similar to last year, matchups will be available to vote on my Instagram story as well as TikTok story. This year, the matches will be posted by Thursday night around 6 p.m. Central Time. So that way you'll have pretty much all day Friday until Friday evening to make your picks, make your expert picks. But like I said last year, you get 1 point just for playing. So if you decide to participate in marquee matchups, you'll get a shot to win the grand prize. If you choose the game correctly, you will get an additional 2 points. So you can get a maximum of 3 points in a weekend. And there's only going to be one game that you have to pick. Want to make it a little easier for everyone. But the most points that you can get will be 3 points in a weekend. So each point you receive will be an entry into a drawing that I will do for a $25 Amazon gift card. So who doesn't like Amazon gift cards, right? We all shop on Amazon, probably more than we're supposed to, or more than we need to, I should say. But the last day to play in marquee matchups will be December 12th. The winner will be announced on December 15th. So marquee matchups this weekend, starting with, of course, the Emirates NBA Cup. That is tonight, depending on when you're listening to this. The NBA Cup, obviously a new tournament that the NBA has been doing over the past few seasons, where you had the Los Angeles Lakers win the NBA Cup a couple years ago, and then last year was the Milwaukee Bucks, if I'm not mistaken. But tonight's marquee matchup game will be an Emirates NBA Cup game. It'll be between the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. The game will be at 6 p.m. Central Time on Amazon Prime Video, of course, one of the new NBA partners for this year. But I'm excited. I'm excited to see who ends up winning that coveted grand prize of $25 for Amazon. But folks, that is all the show I have for you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. As I always say, if you could do all the good things like share, subscribe, leave a comment or two, I would greatly appreciate it. Follow at Another Turnover on all the socials. I mean, enjoy all the festivities this weekend. I mean, it's Halloween today. You got Halloween candy. You got football. You got baseball, the World Series. You got, of course, basketball, and college basketball is just around the corner. What a time to be alive, right? But be sure to stay safe, take care, and I will see you next week. Peace.